So I am delighted to be able to be talking to Irshad Manji, who just presented in front of our 2020 Heads of School Conference here at Mohonk. It was a very powerful presentation. Irshad is a best-selling author. She's a fellow with Oxford University's Initiative for Global Ethics and Human Rights. In partnership with Oxford, she's a founding member of Moral Courage College,
Right.
which develops teachers as high-impact leaders in the realm of social and emotional learning. In 2003, Irshad released her international bestseller, The Trouble with Islam Today, a Muslim's call for reform in her faith. She has been nominated for a PBS film, Faith Without Fear, and most recently, her latest book, Don't Label Me, is a provocative take on diversity. And it's become a resource for educators who want to equip a new generation to move beyond us against them. So, Irshad, I'd like you to share with our wider audience what you have come to understand moral courage to mean.
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, I love the way you ask the question, what I've come to understand moral courage to mean, because I teach it now quite differently than I used to teach it. I used to teach moral courage to mean speaking truth to power. Wow, that makes a lot of sense. There's a problem, though. In fact, there are two problems with that simple definition. One is my truth isn't necessarily the truth. Your truth isn't necessarily all there is to understanding truth. The second problem with speaking truth to power is that it assumes that power is external to you, that you're the powerless one who must speak truth. But the fact of the matter is, as I explained in my talk to the heads of school just now, that anybody who is born with a brain is born with an ego. An ego is a function of the primitive part of the brain. An ego is power. If we are not aware of how the ego manipulates our own behavior, it is easy to abuse the power of our ego so that in speaking truth to power, I become confrontational, disdainful, disrespectful. I impose my truth on you, the power, as if that is going to come up with some kind of a solution, when in reality, imposing always plants the seeds of backlash. So I'm not actually solving anything at all. The power that everybody on God's green earth has, regardless of your skin color, gender, religion, sexual orientation, and so forth, is the power of the ego. And if we can teach a new generation how to manage ego so that it is constructive rather than destructive, not only will we be teaching them to address social injustice, but we'll be teaching them to do it in a way that lasts, that is durable, not the prelude to unnecessary backlash.
So maybe I'd like to learn a little more about the Moral Courage College. Could you talk a little bit about how it was founded, how widespread it is?
Yeah. So now that we know, moral courage to mean, first and foremost, speak truth to the power that is your own ego, even as you speak truth to external powers. We've got to teach a new generation how to stand for the right thing without demeaning or shaming or humiliating those who have a different point of view. Again, because the point here is to find lasting solutions, durable progress, not momentary progress, which is no progress at all. The way to scale that work is by equipping teachers, certified teachers, to teach their own students. I can flit around from school to school to school and teach this to students. And that's what I've been doing for the last 15 years. I've been a professor of moral courage for a decade at New York University. After that, at the University of Southern California. Now, as you've just pointed out, with Oxford University. But at a certain point, the work needs to spread faster and further. And I don't want to be living on a plane for the rest of my life. And the way that I have found to scale this work is by helping teachers to introduce moral courage to their own students. But in order to do this credibly, teachers also have to know how to role model moral courage, and therefore develop the kinds of relationships with their own students that allow their students to be heard. That's when students will see, aha, you're not just telling me to develop moral courage, you're showing me. And Moral Courage College, therefore, is both an online platform and an in-person service that equips teachers to teach moral courage. Soon, you'll be able to come to moralcourage.com and, as a teacher, take an online course in teaching moral courage, after which Oxford University will give you a certificate of completion. And if you are so passionate about this work, if you believe that this is the key to developing a new generation of leaders who have visions rather than just agendas, then you can also hire one of the college's mentors to come to your school and help you develop Moral Courage College as a space within your own school where students and other faculty can learn to practice moral courage.
So it's a separate entity, or is it understood as a part of every teacher's toolbox, no matter what subject or discipline or,
right.
or grade?
The hope is that many teachers across many disciplines will understand that moral courage can be integrated into not just their subject areas, but also in the way that they teach their subject areas, so that their students feel the permission to ask lots of questions and to take issue with some of what is being taught and to challenge teachers themselves, respectfully to be sure, but nonetheless challenge them, and to understand that this is how we allow for democratic discussion to then, inspire lasting solutions, because now everybody feels heard. And so there is no need for backlash. There is no need for grievance and resentment. So whether you're teaching science, and specifically, for example, bioethics, and what kind of moral dilemmas we as citizens of this country need to be thinking about as artificial intelligence is being developed, and how do we head off those problems by developing AI in ethical ways, whether it's science, whether it is civics, whether it is literature, mathematics, you name it. There is always room for moral courage to be integrated into the teaching of it, so that we are raising a generation that is able to communicate across differences. And I don't just mean differences of race and gender and sexuality and the usual markers we think about when we think about diversity. I also mean across differences of viewpoint. That is how we achieve unity without uniformity.
So that concept, the concept of differences of viewpoint, makes me think about your most recent book.
Yeah.
So perhaps you could talk a little bit about what a label is,
Yeah.
and your thinking regarding labels?
So the book is entitled Don't Label Me. I think you now get what I think about labels. However, you're right, there is more to say than just that. Look, from a neuroscientific viewpoint, our brains can only handle so much at any given time. I need to make sense of the world in front of me. So what you're sitting in, I'm going to call it a chair. What you're wearing, I'm going to call it a blouse. Or what you have on the top of your head, I'm going to call it hair. I need to give labels to all of these things because I need to move on with life. I need to get on with my day. The problem is that people are not things. The chair, the blouse, the hair, well, your hair grows, okay, I got it, but the chair, the blouse, they are static. Human beings are sentient. We are always evolving. We are always on the move for better and for worse. So to throw labels on us and fix us inside those labels is actually to distort who we are. It's fine to start with, hi, I'm Irshad Manji. I'm a Muslim. I'm a lesbian. I'm a person of color. Obviously, I'm a woman. And I'm an immigrant to this country. Okay. But in telling you those things, I'm not telling you everything there is to know about me. And in fact, just on the basis of those things, you don't know, you can't know who I vote for. And you can't know why I vote the way I do. So the backstory, someone's backstory, is infinitely more important than the labels we throw on top of them. Here's the bottom line. In Don't Label Me, I make the distinction between honest diversity and dishonest diversity. Dishonest diversity is all about putting labels on people and deciding that's all I need to know. And using them for those labels. How many Muslims have we got in this room? How many gay people do we have in this room? Okay, that many? Great, we've got diversity, check. That is not humanizing people. That is treating people as commodities and relationships as transactions. That's dishonest diversity. Honest diversity is to say, all right, so Irshad happens to be a Muslim, but I don't know how she practices her faith. I don't know what she thinks of head coverings or, how she feels about fasting during the month of Ramadan. If I'm interested in her as a person, I'll ask her questions rather than assuming based on a label. So honest diversity is about engaging and understanding. That's why, as came up during the Q&A of this talk I just gave, that's why simply labeling people who support Donald Trump as those people, I'm sorry, is not good enough. In fact, it's not good, number one, because you don't know them. You only know of them. You don't know why they voted for this particular candidate. And different people will have different reasons. And if you take the time to actually ask why, and then ask another question based on what you've just heard, you're going to find that you learn something from them that you didn't know before. And maybe, just maybe, if you want to change their minds, and I'm not saying that you should go into every such conversation wanting to change someone's mind, but if you do, because you fundamentally believe that this is a dangerous thing to do, to vote for a candidate like that, then the only way you'll have a shot at being heard is if you're first willing to hear. When you're willing to hear, the defenses of the person you're hearing come down. And that's when they've got the psychic energy and bandwidth to then finally hear you. So honest diversity actually is in the enlightened self-interest of anybody who loves diversity, period.
If you could imagine, let's say, a very thoughtful school, an ideal school, what would be the components it would have? What would a day be like?
Well, far be it for me to be the head of an imaginary school, and I think there are lots of other people far more qualified than I for that. Having said that, if I were on the board of trustees of such a school, I would want to advocate that questions, lots and lots of questions, be allowed in every class, in every subject, not just between students, but also between teachers and students. And that as a result, we allow for the souls of individuals to grow. Questions are the soul's way of saying, I'm ready to grow. Mm-hmm. To tell people what to think is not education, it's indoctrination. To give people the tools to think for themselves is education. And then, once we know what someone thinks, to ask why. How did they come to those conclusions? Is to allow yourself to be educated in turn. As far as I'm concerned, a self-respecting teacher is first and foremost a student.
Okay, well, I think we should end on that note with my thank you for taking the time to speak to our audience.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having the courage to invite me to speak.
Wow, it's a pleasure.